What's up guys, welcome back to my channel, or if this is the first time that you're seeing me, my name is Rachel and I am a newlywed. After 10 years of dating my high school sweetheart, we finally got married in August of 2018. So trust me, the memories and the stress of planning our wedding is still very fresh in my mind. So with that being said, in today's video, I'm going to be giving you 50 of my best wedding planning tips / pieces of advice. So the first thing on my list is finances. Make sure you budget whatever you want to do for your wedding first before you start anything else, so that way you guys have something to follow for all the things that will come. So you have to have a number in mind that you are trying to stick to, so that way you don't go out and spend way more than you're able to actually afford. And make sure that it's an amount that you both feel comfortable with and you both agree on, so that way one of you is not left out feeling resentful towards the other. Now with that being said, next, after you figure out your budget, figure out who, if anyone, is planning to pitch in. So every family, every situation is different. There are some families who really want to put a lot of money and effort into the wedding, and other families who kind of just want to sit back on the sidelines and let you do everything. It's totally fine either way. You just have to figure out with your family what they are really thinking of doing. And it's important to get this conversation out of the way sooner than later, so that way no one is left with any hard feelings or no one is left feeling like they were left out of the equation. And if someone is planning on helping, that is definitely going to affect your personal budget with your spouse, so you need to know that in advance so that way you can adjust to that. Figure out your A and B guest list early, because this is really going to have a factor into a lot of other things that are going to come up within the wedding as far as how many guests are actually going to be there. So you have to plan and make sure you have enough space for all of these people. Now with your A list, these are the people who absolutely, positively have to be there. The closest, most important people to you in the entire world, and you would be devastated. Your wedding would not be the same if these people were not there. Now your B list is the people who you would absolutely love to be there, people that you adore, maybe you're not extremely close with, but would be super, super nice to have. Now once you have your guest list in place, it is time to look for a venue. The venue, for me, in my opinion, is one of the very first things that you should do once you get engaged, because your venue is really going to set the stage and the tone for everything else. And it's important to have your guest list first, because you need to make sure that the amount of people that you're hoping that are able to come to your wedding are going to be able to fit in the venue that you choose. And you also have to make sure that if you have anyone who is handicapped, that they are wheelchair accessible. If you're able to have children or you're not able to have children, what are the restrictions of that venue, and is that going to fit within the guest list of people who you have? Another thing with your venue is, where is it located? Are your guests going to have to travel a really long distance to get there? Or is it even a big deal if they do? A lot of things you have to consider whenever you're looking at your venue. How much space do you have in your venue? What do you have to get for decorations? Your venue is so important because it takes away or adds to a lot of your planning, depending on what you choose. How much is the venue planning on offering? What certain things can you or can you not do at the venue? Can you have your own food? Do you have to use the food there? Can you hire a bartender, or do you have to use their bartender? There's so many questions that you have to ask and figure out once you find your venue. So like I said, your venue is super important. Your venue should be booked first because there are so many factors that are based on your venue. Now, if it's getting really close to your wedding and you're getting ready to send out your invitations, remember, the fastest way to cut down your budget is to cut your guest list. So this is when it's really important to bring up that A list and B list of guests and really hone in and figure out who really has to be there and who maybe does not have to be there. You have to be realistic with the amount of money that you have. Yes, it'd be nice to invite every single person that you love, but can you really afford to invite that many people? That's what you have to figure out. Have a contract for everything. And when I say everything, I mean literally everything. If you meet with a vendor and you guys sign a contract and anything from that contract ever changes, make sure you go back and get that added into your contract in writing. Trust me, put everything in writing so you don't end up with a whole bunch of drama and crap, such as what I had to deal with one of my vendors. That is something I would not wish upon my worst enemy. Take my advice, put everything in writing. And also, with that being said, research every vendor extensively. Again, take my advice for this, okay? Don't just take someone's recommendation because they're your friend or acquaintance or something else. Really make sure you take the time to research everybody's reviews, check out everything online, and also when you have your vendors, meet everybody in person. Now, I didn't do this for all of my vendors, but the vast majority of vendors I did meet in person. And again, piece of advice, please meet everybody in person. It's very, very, very important because there's nothing worse than having a stranger show up to your wedding and you feeling very uncomfortable with them being there, or your guests feeling very uncomfortable. You really want to make sure that person can vibe with you well and vibe with your guests really well. Stay really organized. Keep track of everything and have a list of all of your vendors and how to contact them. So what I did when it was closer to my wedding day, I had a list of all of my vendors and I had all their contact information that I sent out to all the vendors that we had. So that way, if someone had to contact someone else for the wedding, they knew exactly who they were and how to get a hold of them so that they could accommodate things between the two of them. And it's also really nice to have that in general too, because if they go to the wedding and they really enjoy working with this other person and they want to maybe work with them again or suggest them to other brides, they're able to have the information to easily give that to somebody else. Now, on top of sharing that list with all of your vendors, it's very important to share that list with your important wedding party people. So everyone who is involved in the wedding, your maid of honor, your best man, anyone else who's in charge of a lot of your big wedding details. Make sure they have this list so that way if something comes up, instead of having to go through you for everything, they're able to contact that vendor directly and figure out the issue. Trust me, you're going to have enough stress and things on your plate, and it's going to be very nice to not always have to be the middleman. Be super detailed when it comes to your timeline, but be also realistic and remember that it's probably not going to go the way that you were planning it to go. So I had my timeline down to a science, like every single minute was accounted for, and for the most part we were lucky and everything was on track. There was only one little mishap where we got, I think, 15 minutes behind. But overall, it was so nice to have that because I knew in my head exactly what was coming next, and all the important people and vendors that were in the wedding party knew exactly what to expect next as well. It helped everything really flow very smoothly. Now, like I mentioned, not everything is going to go the way that you expect things to go. There's always going to be something that goes wrong, whether it's something super minor or something super major, and you just have to remember to just go with the flow. It's okay, because even though in the moment it feels like the world is ending, I promise that when you look back on it, it's really not going to be that big of a deal. And you don't want to look back and have memories of your wedding, and the only thing that you can think of is the fact that your shoe broke when you were walking down the aisle. There's so many more important things to remember about your wedding day. Don't let any little thing like that goes wrong ruin it. Just try to look past it the best that you can, and remember, it doesn't matter. Now when we're talking about budget, leave room for unforeseen things, because I promise you there are going to be so many expenses, whether big or little, that are going to come up that you are not planning for. There's so many things that you have to do and think about and pay for that I never ever would have thought about before I planned my own wedding. Have a vision board or a Pinterest board handy to give to all of your vendors, so that way they have an idea of what you were looking for when you were explaining the details of your wedding to them. Now, in addition to that, it's important for you to have a vision of what you were looking for as well, and Pinterest is so nice to get so many creative and unique ideas from. Have a wedding website. I loved having a wedding website, and I thought it was so convenient. Again, because instead of everyone having to come to you and overwhelm you more than you already are, they're able to just go onto the website and get details there. So details such as directions, what are some things to do around there, where should I go for hotel accommodations, do you have a hotel accommodation code that I can use for a discount, what should I wear to the wedding, what time does it start, what time is the rehearsal, who is allowed to come, can I bring my kids, is it wheelchair accessible? Is there someone there to do parking? Like, there's so many questions that people are going to ask you, and it's really nice just to have all that information on your wedding website so that people are able to access that really easily. And with the guest list and the online wedding website, there's also an app called The Knot, which I use to keep track of things on my phone as well as on the actual website. Now, there's obviously other websites that you can use as well for your wedding website, but The Knot is what I chose for mine, and I was very, very happy and pleased with it. and it is free. Another thing with the wedding website is that you can put your registry right on your website, and you can also have your guest list right on the website. So we personally didn't use this solely for RSVP because we had a lot of older guests who are not super computer savvy, which is okay, but if you have a lot of younger guests, it is so nice to RSVP online because for one, it saves you on stamps, and two, you can set it so people who aren't on the guest list cannot RSVP, so that way you don't have to worry about extra unwanted guests. Wedding flea markets are awesome, and they're so helpful to go and get ideas and talk to other brides and get advice from them. But be prepared that some things are going to be very overpriced. So you have to be willing to negotiate some prices with people to actually get a realistic good deal. But if they're unable to come down on price, it's really easy to have that idea in mind and recreate it for yourself at a lower price. So always check around. There's flea markets all the time. Whether you have to drive 15 minutes or an hour, it's definitely important, in my opinion, a huge help to go to as many flea markets as you can. Don't wait to start planning, but also don't feel like everything has to be done right now. So I am not a procrastinator. If I want something done, I want to get it done and out of the way right now. But that is the quickest way to overwhelm yourself, and it is not realistic for the amount of things that you really have to do to plan your wedding. So once you get engaged, don't start planning the second after you get engaged. Let it soak in and enjoy that moment of being engaged for a little bit as long as you need to, but don't wait months to start planning your wedding if you're planning on getting married within the next year. Because trust me, even though it feels like you have a ton of time, it goes by so fast and there's so much you have to do, it is not worth cramming all at the end. It's really nice to have a timeline in mind and have a list of things that you want done by a certain date, so that way you can stay on track and that way you don't feel too overwhelmed because you know exactly what is coming next. Keep track of your payments and due dates so that you make sure everything is getting done and paid on time, so that way you can prevent having to pay additional fees. So for this, I use the Wed Happy app a lot to keep track of my budgeting, and it always let me know how much money I have left to spend within the budget. And two, if I had a payment coming up, it let me know that I had a payment coming up within X amount of days. Really think about the time of day that you want to get married, because that is really going to affect the mood of the day and also the food that you are going to be having. So if you plan to get married at, let's say, 10 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to be having burgers and steak for your food, right? You also have to remember what the weather is going to be like as far as the temperature at certain points of the day. Now, is it going to be too hot for guests? Is it going to be too cool for guests? Or is it going to be just right? You have to really pay attention to what time of day it is. Now, with the time of day, you also have to remember what time it is that guests are going to start leaving. So if you get married at, let's say, 8 o'clock at night, your guests probably aren't going to stay until 1 in the morning. So really, your wedding is going to be very short, and are you going to be able to get all the things that you want to get done within a few hours? If that, probably not. So you got to make sure that you get married at an early enough time that you're able to fit in everything that you want, and then also have time for your guests at the end. Really think about the season and time of year that you want to get married. Again, if you plan on having a winter wedding, you're probably not going to have a dress that is sleeveless and really summery, or else you're going to be freezing. Or, same thing too, if you want to get married in the middle of summer, you're not going to have a dress that is super hot and heavy, or else you're going to be dying outside. Now, I chose to have a ball gown dress, even though it was the middle of summer and it was really hot, but I didn't care. So if that's you, don't worry about it, but it's definitely something to think about for your guests as well. So are your guests going to be having to travel in the snow? Is there possibly going to be a snowstorm? Is that going to affect people being able to come to your wedding? These are all things that you have to keep in mind. Two, if it's a weekend wedding, is it the weekend of a holiday? Are people going to be able to travel on this day? What else is going to interfere and conflict with the date that you pick? If you choose to do favors, make sure that it's something that's useful and meaningful, or else you're just going to waste people's time and your own money, and they're not really going to care about them as much as you would hope that they would. Now, for us personally, we chose to have a caricature at our wedding, and it was such a great idea. Everyone loved it. And that way, it doubled as some entertainment to keep people busy while we were taking photos, and it also doubled as their wedding favor because they're able to take that photo home with them so that they could remember our wedding forever. My tip would be to think of something similar to that is going to take up time and help entertain your guests while you're doing photos and other things, so that way they're not just sitting there getting bored. If you choose to not do your wedding website and RSVP online, just be prepared that you're going to waste a ton of money on stamps because there are so many people that will not send them back. So I was floored at the amount of people who do not send RSVPs back, even if you already pre-stamp their RSVP that they're going to send back in the mail. So all they have to do is write a number down and send it in the mail. Like, it's already pre-addressed and everything. So just be prepared that you are going to waste money on stamps. And it is so frustrating because then when it comes closer to the wedding, you're going to be trying to track everyone down, trying to get a realistic head count of who's actually going to be there. Really think about the decorations instead of just going crazy and buying all the decor that you find that you love. Really make sure that it's functional and it's something that is going to be useful and maybe something that you can resell, so that way you're not wasting a ton of money. So in my opinion, you really want to have a look in mind first. Really figure out what you want your wedding to look like. Once you have your venue, figure out what you need. What areas do you need to decorate? How do you want those areas to look? Figure those things out in your mind so that you have an actual goal of what certain pieces you really need, so you're not just buying a bunch of things and having to find random places for it. Try to make sure everything has a purpose. And with that too, make sure that at the end of the day, is it going to be something that you're going to be able to use in your home afterwards? Are you just going to pitch it and throw away and have it be a waste of money? Or is it something that you're going to be able to resell back to another bride so that you're able to make some money back from it, so it's not a complete waste of money? Take time between you and your future spouse that are non-wedding planning times. So trust me, if you are like me and you're very anal and organized, wedding planning is going to take over your mind and your life sometimes, and it's going to feel like you can't escape it. So make sure you set time aside with your future spouse, that you go on dates and you cannot talk about anything wedding related. Just focus on the two of you and what's actually going on in your relationship at the present time, so that way you don't lose sight of where you actually are today when you're so worried about where you're going to be come wedding time. Your shoes will matter, and if you're worried about your feet hurting, make sure you get a second pair if you have to. If you want to wear a really nice pair of shoes, that's fine, but by the end of the night, your feet are going to be killing you and you're going to want to have something else to change it into. Realize and respect that everybody is going to have their opinion, but keep in mind and always remember that they are there to celebrate the two of you. It is your event, it is your day. Everyone gets their own day, hopefully, if they choose to. But they are there to celebrate you. So you have to remember that you have to do what you want on your special day, because you're probably, hopefully, never going to get to do this day again. Unless you're open just to getting a whole bunch of random gifts, make sure you have a registry and only put on there what you really need and are going to use. So what Devin and I did is we went through and we figured out exactly what we could upgrade, because we had already been living together for so long. So there wasn't a lot of things that we truly really needed, but there are things that we'd like to have nicer versions of. Again, people aren't always going to stick to your registry for the most part. A lot of people will, or they'll get ideas from that, so they have an idea of what to get you, so that way you're not just getting a whole bunch of random things. Take advantage of free stationery. So I personally did save the dates, because we got married on a weekday. If we didn't get married on a weekday, I wouldn't have done save the dates. But what I did is I got our free copy of our save the dates from Shutterfly, and then I took it to a local printing shop and have it then printed out there. And it was so much cheaper than if I would have bought them online in the first place. So take advantage of deals like that. If you can get free prints online and take them home and have them reprinted for cheaper, that's a really good way to save money. Have a deadline for your RSVPs and make sure that you stick to it. So not just for your own sanity, but also for your vendors. Your vendors have to have an idea in advance of how many people they are expecting so that they can prepare for that. You have to have an idea of what you're really going to be spending. And it's not just unfair to your vendors, but it's also unfair to you if you don't get that. Now, with that being said, on the RSVPs, on the back of every single RSVP card, have a notebook to the side of you and keep track of your RSVPs. So what I personally did is on the back of every RSVP, I wrote a number. And on the number, I wrote on the notepad who that was going to and how many people that was for. So that way, when people send their RSVPs back and they don't write who it's from, you're able to look at that list and figure out who it was that RSVP'd. Because trust me, you're going to be surprised at how many people don't say who it actually is sending it back. So you're going to have no idea who the heck it is that sent back that RSVP. But if you have that list, you're able to check that number on the back and correlate it with your list. Make sure you have a list of must-have photos. So between the two of you, between your bridal party, between family, between friends, really think about what type of photos you really want. If there's pose photos that you want, make sure you have a list of that. If there's certain people that you want in certain photos, make sure you also have a list of that. Now, it makes it a lot easier for yourself and your photographer if you organize those photos in order of who is in those photos, so that way you're not having to pull your grandma back and forth into photos several different times. She's able to just stand there, get those done with, and then move on with the day. It's much more convenient for them, and it makes things move much more smoothly. Now, with the photos being said, it's very important that you have a photo runner. Now, personally, we had a photo runner for each side of the family. Someone who really knew all of the groom's guests really well, and someone who really knew all of the bride's guests really well, so that they knew who those people were to run and go get them. So we had this list sent to them, and we also had this list sent to vendors, so they knew exactly who was going to be in the photos, and these people knew to stick around because they were going to be getting pulled. That way it's not a whole bunch of chaos and you're just shouting out random names and people aren't in the bathroom for 20 minutes and you're waiting for them because they didn't know that they were supposed to be in a photo. That way you don't waste any of your time. Taste test everything before you hire your vendors. So again, make sure you really figure out what everything is going to look like and taste like, so that way you have a realistic idea of what to expect. Is this going to be worth your money? Are your guests going to enjoy this, or are your guests going to hate it? We personally chose a certain dish for people who we knew the older generation would really like, the younger generation would really like, and the mid-age generation would really like. So that way everyone had something that they really enjoyed, and there was also a really good variety for people to choose from. Always do your research and ask several questions. So maybe I over-ask questions, but I don't like surprises, especially if they're bad, and I want to know everything up front. So have a list of questions ready in advance for every single vendor, so that way you can eliminate any surprises possible. Really make sure you know what you're getting into first. If you are planning an outdoor wedding, make sure you have a backup plan. No matter how bad you want to get married outside, there is always that possibility that the weather is not going to cooperate. So you have to make sure you have a backup plan, so that way you're not completely devastated day of and you don't know what to do. I personally have always wanted to get married outside, and I got very lucky that we were able to do that. But we also had a backup plan set in place, and I knew in my mind, and I made peace with it, that if it was going to rain and the weather was not going to cooperate, this is what was going to happen, and I had to be okay with it. Have a seating chart. So I know there's mixed opinions on this, and this is just personally mine, but having a seating chart, for one, gives you a peace of mind because you know where everybody's at, and you're able to put the most important people closest to you. And you're also able to keep in mind that if your DJ is here, you don't want your grandma sitting right next to them blaring in your ears. You want to be able to be realistic and give your grandma some space, so that way she's not deaf by the end of your wedding. Now, on top of that, it also helps your guests feel less out of place. So I don't know about you, but it's really uncomfortable if you go to a wedding and you don't know anybody, or maybe there's a few people that you do know, but the seats at their table are already taken. It gets so awkward. So if you already have a seating chart done, you're able to put people together who already know each other, who are already comfortable, or people who have similar interests who would be comfortable sitting next to each other. Now, on top of that, it also cuts down on costs because you know exactly how many tables you need, you know exactly how many chairs you need, and that way you're not renting out extra chairs, tables, linens, decorations, and etc. because you already know exactly what you need. Decide if you want to have children at your wedding or not and stick to that. So again, this is another controversial thing. People have really strong feelings either way. You have to do what's best for you and your spouse. And again, if the venue of your wedding even allows for that, that's something that you have to keep in mind. So depending on the number of children that you have in your family or in your friend group, that can really raise up your costs a lot because there's a lot of extra seating and that's a lot of extra plates that you have to pay for someone who's probably going to be running around and not really eating a whole bunch of the food anyways. A lot of food vendors will make you pay per head. It doesn't matter if the guest is 2 years old or if the guest is 50 years old. You're going to pay that certain amount per plate. even if they eat one bite of it or they eat the whole meal. There's a lot of things to think about when you have kids at a wedding, and you just have to keep in mind if that's something that you want to have at yours or not. Now this is something that I had to learn the hard way, and that is that it's okay to ask for help. And for people who want to help you, genuinely want to help you, designate tasks to them so that way you're not so overwhelmed and you're able to get things done more efficiently. It is really, really nice, I will tell you firsthand, to have some help, so that way you can have a little bit of a peace of mind. It's really, really fun if you get a group of friends together or a group of family members together and just have wedding workshop days. So have a list of the different crafts and tasks that need to be done and just hang out for the day. Maybe have a glass of wine or whatever you want to do and just bang out a whole bunch of tasks and get them done and over with. If you are planning to do rose gold things can be a lot more expensive than other colors. So for me, spray paint was my best friend. We used so much spray paint for things, and trust me, you will save so much money if you just buy the regular color and spray paint it rose gold. So what I did is I went and bought several different variations of rose gold spray paint, and we used that to spray paint a ton of our decorations. Make sure you have a wedding block for hotel guests. So this is really important, especially if a lot of your guests are from out of town, or your guests just want to get away for the weekend and not go right back home afterwards. We wanted to stay in a hotel, and we wanted to have some time alone in a different scenario to celebrate our first night as a married couple. And we also had a lot of guests that were coming from out of town, so it was really cool to have some extra one-on-one time with those guests because they were able to be at the hotel with us. The importance of a wedding block is to make sure that your guests are going to be able to stay at that hotel with you guys on the day that you're getting married, and then maybe the days leading up to your wedding. So make sure you call the hotel in advance and block off certain hotel rooms and let your guests know that you have a hotel block, and let them know your special code so that they can get a discounted rate on their room. Make sure you have ground rules set in place for guests. Is there going to be a certain dress code? Is there going to be colors that you want people to wear or colors that you don't want people to wear? Are there going to be certain guests who they can invite whoever they want to bring with them and you're okay with that? Or are you really strict about exactly who is allowed to be there and who is not allowed to be there? Make sure your guests know that up front, so that way they don't just bring their cousin and their friends from out of town because they're at their house at the time and they want to go to the wedding with them. Or else you're going to have a bunch of extra people you were not planning for. Photos. If you want people taking photos during your wedding ceremony, make sure you let them know. If you do not want people to take photos during your wedding ceremony, also make sure that they know. We personally had a sign out, and we also made sure that our officiant let everyone know that we did not want photos taken while we were getting married because we did not want them to mess up the professional photos that we were having taken. We really just wanted everyone to be present in the moment with us. Get a rewards credit card. Now, I'm not saying this if you have horrible credit, go out and get a credit card, but it is a really nice way to rack up some extra money and save, especially if things come up that you are not planning for. I put some of the bigger purchases on the card with 0% APR, so that way I didn't have to worry about paying it back for a long period of time after our wedding, and I was also getting cash back from those purchases, so that way it wasn't actually costing as much as it said it was. Now this is just a special touch that I personally did that I would recommend you guys doing as well because our guests loved it. So for our thank you cards, what we did, instead of just sending them a thank you card, we had a photo included of all of the guests that we had taken. We had everyone spaced out in the shape of a heart, with Devin and I included in it, and we had that sent in our thank you card. But on top of that, if we had photos with those certain guests, we had those photos printed, and we also included that in the thank you card. And that way too, they had extra memories of your special day as well. Make your wedding day your own. Don't feel like you have to do something just because that's what someone else did. If you want to do something that's strange and out of the ordinary, just do it. If you want to do something classic that everyone does, then do that. Just make sure it's meaningful and unique to you because, again, like I said, you're probably never going to do this again, so do whatever makes you happy. Have a top 3 set as far as what's important to you for budget. So my husband and I sat down very early on after getting engaged and really figured out what are the most important things to us to have in the budget that we wanted to spend the most amount of money on. And for us personally, that was the venue, photography, and videography. Reason being, the venue sets the tone for everything. That really is your base of your wedding. Photography, videography, that's all you have left after the wedding day. So that's why it was so important to us. If you are not dead set on real flowers, buy fake ones. So I'm not like an over-the-top huge silk fan either, but we personally did wooden flowers and everyone loved them. They thought they were so cool. And the thing about that too is I have our bouquet and our boutonniere for the rest of our lives. They're not going to die, nothing's going to happen to them, and I can use them as decoration around the house. I saw real flowers as a huge waste of money because it wasn't a priority to me, and I didn't want to go spend a ton of money on real flowers that were just going to die in a few days anyways, and I would have no memory of all the money that I had spent. So if it's not a big importance to you, go with fake flowers or wooden ones. And again, you'll be able to resell those if you don't want to keep them, and if you do want to keep them, you can use them to decorate your home, or you can give them away to family members as a thank you gift, and your family will love that because they'll always have a piece of your special day. It is okay to cry over the color of a napkin. Now, before I planned my own wedding, I'm like, okay, what is the big deal? There are so many little tedious decisions that you are going to have to make, and some days you're just going to feel so overwhelmed that you don't know what to do. So trust me, there's going to be really days when you cry and freak out over the dumbest little things, and I think all of us probably go through that. And the last thing I wanted to include in this video, and it's a little sad, but it's very true, at least it was for me. The reality is that no one cares about your wedding as much as you do. So even though you're waking up thinking about your wedding 24/7, and it is so exciting and it is so meaningful and important to you, no one else really cares that much. No one else is losing sleep over it. It's not their day, so they don't look at it the same. Planning your wedding can be an extremely lonely time in your life. And I know for me, I knew that my friends and family cared. It's not that they didn't care, it's just they don't care as much as you do. And that's okay, but it can make you feel very, very alone in the process. So if that happens, remember that you can always reach out and ask for help, talk to people, but also don't overwhelm them and bombard them and have that be the only thing that you're ever able to talk about. So I know that was a ton of information and hopefully a lot of great pieces of advice for you guys. I really tried to sit down and think of the most important things that I could think of that were important to me or helpful for me and our wedding planning process. If there's anything that I forgot to share that you would like to include, let me know down in the comment section below so that way you can share your advice and tips as well. If you guys enjoy seeing videos like this, make sure you let me know by hitting the like button and the subscribe button on this video so that I know to make more related content like this. If there's any videos in particular that you would like me to touch on related to this subject, let me know again in the comment section below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching my videos. I appreciate so much all of your support, and I will see you in the next video. Bye guys!